My role is the lead coach of the Olympic programme team for Team England. I think for me, I think if you'd asked me that a few years ago, I think one of the biggest challenges for me was knowing enough, having enough experience, and you're always sort of questioning yourself as to whether you've got all the answers. And I think now, where I am now, I think you realise you never have all the answers, and the biggest challenge really is working with the athletes. That they possess more answers than myself or coaches. I think the challenge is drawing it out of them, and I guess the same for many people. Time is one of the biggest challenges in anything but coaching. You're away a lot, and I think just trying to balance what your time at home and your time away with sport, I think is now probably my biggest challenge. I think I've always had a passion for sport. Football was my biggest passion growing up and through my teenage years, and then it gets to the point you think, what am I going to do with my life? And I came to Loughborough with the idea of being a teacher, and I really just fell into a social crowd that were involved in triathlon, and I was very sort of lucky that kind of the right people were around at the right time, and I was able to just literally start coaching in the student club without really knowing anything about the sport, but very much just grew into it with the people that were around, and they were my friends, and sort of encouraged me just to keep taking on the role of the coach, even though I didn't know what any of the responsibilities and things were. It was a good opportunity to work with people in sport, kind of in this sort of pseudo teaching instructor sort of role, setting sessions and getting used to taking swims, bikes, runs, circuit classes. So that was kind of when I was 19, and it's just sort of gone on from there. The one that really sticks with me, and I guess my day-to-day role really working with youths and juniors, is you never forget the responsibility that you're working with someone else's kids, regardless of age. And I think that's something that I'll never forget that bit of advice. And I think whatever athletes I work with, whatever teams I'm working on at the time, I think I never lose sight of the responsibility I have to the athletes, for just literally duty of care, looking after them, and working with them. And that thing in the back of your head, just knowing when you're going on trips abroad, whether they're with youngsters or with Commonwealth Games team, you're responsible for ultimately their safety, yes, their performance, but those guys at the senior end, they're professionals. They tend to know what they're doing, but I think there's still a subtle responsibility that you still got responsibility to look after them, I think, and that's something that I'll never forget. No, I certainly don't know. I think there's so much to know in each of the different sports, let alone the events, if you like, that we're involved with. I think that the demands of the sport have got so specialised that you never know enough, really, which is sort of, I think it's up to us to find out what we can from experts in those particular sports, and particularly the disciplines that we're working on. I think the other thing for me is probably a real fascination with the conditioning side that sort of hopefully keeps athletes strong enough and healthy enough to support the swim, bike, run elements. But no, I wouldn't say there's not a specialist area as such. I think I try and keep myself sort of quite broad, if you like, that you're able to see the bigger picture, whilst sort of obviously having enough awareness and depth of knowledge of the three sports. But I think as soon as you sort of think, I'm really good at that, then you've dropped the ball somewhere else. I think that I find myself just really trying to keep a broad scope of everything. I think a lot, I would say. I think that a lot of it's down to the personality of the coach, how they manage that. Myself personally, I'm always pen and paper still, which is deemed old-fashioned, I know, but I think there's a whole plethora of ways of recording information, analysing data, and people can go to town on it. And I think one of the challenges that in my sort of personality is just keeping things simple, keeping things on still having a human face-to-face relationship is the most important thing. I think, having said that, thinking of things like bike power and analysing run data from Garmin's, etc., I think is really important. I think that's a great addition to modern performance sport, and it's not to say that I wouldn't use that at all. I think I do. I think it's still being able to bring that information into use. Really, I think that's the skill probably in the modern world with all the technology. And I think the other thing in my area of working is there's so much social media now, which obviously has really good things, getting sport out there, raising the profile, etc. I think that some of the issues with kids and developing relationships, responsibilities they have, I think that's a real challenge, and it's something that is very sort of new to me, not being a social media sort of person. But I think how you then managing group dynamics, for example, is definitely a challenge, as well as the performance analysis side. You've got the group dynamics side, and I think that trying to be savvy to it is important. But I think still keeping a semblance of coaching, to me, is coach-athlete relationship number one, and trying to preserve that, and it's then trying to work with the athlete and figure out who they are, what they need in the kind of medium that they need it in. I thought about this. There's not really any particular moment. I think that I kind of never get too carried away with athlete performances. As I think it's not really my job to get too emotionally attached to athletes, and it's their performance at the end of the day. I think the thing I'm probably most proud of, if one thing sticks to mind, it's probably a relay race. I think you see a lot of relays going through the youths and juniors, and it always reminds me how much you can get out of people and how much they can get out of themselves in a relay format. The one that springs to mind, 2011 European Junior Champs. I think it was the first time they ran the junior team relay after the individual, and there's no way we should have won, but we did. And I think why was one of the proudest moments, I think, because it really showed me at the time how much you can get out of kids when they've done an individual race. They weren't that thrilled with how it went, and you've got to then, again, that responsibility, pick them up, get them refocused, get them thinking about what they learned, not just about the result, and then they go and deliver the next day. And they, as I said, they won. They should never have won. But I think, a weird sort of proudest moment, the European Junior Relay of 2011. But I think that the experience with that has really sort of helped just set things, for me, when you're dealing with with athletes, they know a lot. They know a lot. They're doing it, and part of the role is to draw that out of them. And if you can get them performing at their best off the back of a slight disappointment, then all the better. I think, from my own experience, I think, you've just got to throw yourself into it. And I guess where I got involved was I loved it, and I was also at an age where I didn't really have too much else to think about. So I think that's something that I don't know how that would shift if you're a bit later on in life. You might have a few more responsibilities, but I still think being able to throw yourself wholeheartedly in, commit to it, and by doing that, you'll find out how motivated you are, and then you'll pick up relationships along the way. But the key bit, I think, is being completely self-driven, and if you're self-driven, the rest of it will take care of itself, I think.